And joining us now here on the program, we're going to talk spring planting and also some research that the Soy Checkoff is doing to help farmers through some of the changing weather conditions we see year to year and some of the different things that the Soy Checkoff is doing. Joining us now, he's a director for the United Soybean Board. Indiana farmer Don Weiss is with us here today. Don, it's great to talk with you again. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thanks, Jesse. Happy to be here.
Well, let's just start this off and give us a bit of a rundown on how spring planting and the early growing season has gone for you and your neighbors in Indiana. I know definitely weather has been a hot topic, of course, whether we were getting a lot of rain early or now we're getting a lot of heat and humidity, things like that in the Eastern Corn Belt. So talk about just how this year has gone so far.
Well, you mentioned the word hot topic. We are in the midst of a hot and humid week here in northern Indiana. But reflecting back into the month of April, we had our wettest April here in history in northern Indiana. And of course, that delayed planting. We have naturally worked through the month of May into early June to get that planting done at this point, along with some replant. But definitely a challenge this week with hot weather coupled with drying out.
Well, and thinking about that big shift as well, and I think about last year's growing season as well. I think it goes to speak, Don, that year to year, even month to month, week to week, it just feels like there's always different challenges that we have to combat in our fields, isn't there?
Well, you're exactly right. When I sit here and think about each year being a little bit of a different twist weather-wise, it makes me appreciate the investments that USB is doing in the areas of just looking into research on new soybean varieties and bringing some of those new technologies to market. But you're right. Looking back to last year, we faced a extremely dry growing season, especially mid-May to mid-June, where we went a period of over 3 weeks with not one drop of moisture. And so it just really challenged that early growing and developing crop. And then we turned dry in that last half of August, which is never good for soybean yields in our area. So yeah, you're right. Every year is different. We need to be able to react and rely on some of these new soybean varieties that are out there in those fields.
Let's talk about that a little bit more. You mentioned some of the investment from the Soy Checkoff into different variety research that is, more tolerant to volatile weather conditions. I think of drought, for instance. I mean, that's the biggest one, I think, is, finding new varieties that could withstand, going days upon weeks, maybe without some rainfall. So talk a little bit more about some of the most recent research investments from the United Soybean Board and the Soy Checkoff into that research.
Well, the checkoff dollars are invested in a lot of different areas, but one of those areas is funding research tools and other focuses on genetics to make soybeans, more weather tolerable, drought resistant being one of those. Also, we're working with researchers to help these soybean varieties withstand different pests and also bring other beneficial qualities into these plants as well to, in the end, give us that better yield.
Well, and I know that looking at that research, that's one piece of the puzzle. There's other things, though, too, that, of course, I'm sure you could speak to as a farmer, soil health being one of them. I mean, if we don't have good soil health, and I know there's a lot of research and work being done there, if we don't have good soil health, then we're not getting that crop off to a good start, and so that plays such a big role, doesn't it?
Well, when you think about soil health, and some of these weather events, it seems like we have more of these more significant weather events each year, and so USB and Soy Checkoff is working hard to focus on what we see as beneficial to the soil and bringing those health attributes into more of a focus. And these areas really work with a program like Farmers for Soil Health, where we are working with some key partners, including the National Corn Growers and National Pork Board, where there's a cost share program out there, and also assistance to farmers to grow items like cover crops and open up those soils, and hold that moisture in times like this week where we are in a dry and hot period. If that cover crop is down, I could take you out to a field on our farm where the moisture is still beneficial on that underneath that cover crop, to help conserve moisture instead of losing it to the sun.
Yeah, so many different practices and techniques, and you brought up Farmers for Soil Health, and I think about all the various sustainable practices that are being talked about a lot right now in row crop agriculture and beyond here, and I think a lot of that comes down to as well education. Let's talk about that a little bit. Your role as a director for the United Soybean Board, I think a lot of the practices that we talk about all the time, a lot of the different things we look at, a lot of this research and more, it really comes down to educating our growers across the country and getting them as much information as they could possibly use to help inform the decisions on their operation. Right, Don?
Absolutely. And the bottom line is that there is a tremendous amount of work going into different projects that our soybean checkoff funds and USB, chooses those projects each and every year as far as how to invest those checkoff dollars. But in the end, it's getting that information back out to farmers. And there's a fantastic resource for bringing those best practices into light. And that would be, I'm going to give you a website here real quick, Jesse. It's the soybeanresearchinfo.com. And that is a fantastic source where farmers or anyone that's interested in ag can go and see those insights on different research projects and insights on best practices each and every year. Naturally, as farmers are trying to seek that best yield, and trying to work around these weather conditions that so often can give us a roadblock or give us a hurdle that we need to overcome.
You just gave me a new website to go spend some time on there, Don, and take a look at some of that information. Soybeanresearchinfo.com. I know as well, folks can stay up to date with news and more from the United Soybean Board at unitedsoybean.org. So a couple websites there for folks, unitedsoybean.org or soybeanresearchinfo.com. Don, before we let you go, anything final you'd share about the work that you guys are doing right now with the soy checkoff, or anything you'd want to reiterate to soybean growers listening in today?
Well, naturally, just put a plug in for the work that soybean growers around the country that sit on the United Soybean Board are doing each and every year to look at best ways to invest soybean checkoff dollars to not only bring these types of projects through on a research front, but also just to bring overall profitability and promotion of U.S. soybeans, not only here in the U.S., but around the world.
Well, and again, find more info, unitedsoybean.org. Don Weiss, USB Director from Indiana. Don, thanks for joining us on the program today. It's always good to talk with you, and we'll look forward to having you back on the show again soon.
Thank you, Jesse.